It's the Jon Ramos Show. Like you've never heard or seen it before. Well, because he actually lets the guests speak. Now from the vast power of FoxSportsRadio.com, ladies and gentlemen, Jon Ramos.
Hi, everybody. Jon Ramos here, and welcome into another edition of the Jon Ramos Show interviews here at FoxSportsRadio.com. I'm Jon Ramos, and today we have a actor extraordinaire, the man you all know, actor DB Sweeney. You can catch DB currently coming out in a movie on January 29th, on digital, on demand, and in the theaters called Haymaker. And you've remembered DB from other movies in his career like 8 Men Out, The Cutting Edge, Fire in the Sky, and of course, Gardens of Stone. He's got a lot to talk about in his career, what he's been up to, and of course, this movie, Haymaker. So without further ado, let's introduce and bring him on in. Here's actor DB Sweeney. DB, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Appreciate your time and effort. Let's talk first about this movie, Haymaker. That's why we're here. A unique movie, an interesting movie. What brought you to, delve into this movie?
Well, like a lot of fight movies, it's an underdog story, and we all love an underdog story. And I was drawn to it because of the behind-the-scenes underdog story, which is Nick Sasso, the guy who plays the main character, who wrote the script, who directed it, and produced it. It's a Herculean effort to do all those things on a movie. And I did a movie called 2 Tickets to Paradise a few years ago where, I had already acted in 40 movies or whatever the case may be. And so I had a little more experience than Nick. So I just had a lot of admiration for him, biting off that big a piece of the apple on the first shot.
Now, you play Nick's older brother, Mac, and you have a lot of words of wisdom. I mean, he starts off kind of working with you, right, as a bouncer and moves on to other things that you kind of involve yourself. Tell me how that relationship was with Nick, because he said in one of his thoughts was that bringing you onto this movie was really big. He leaned on you for how to play a lead, and he leaned on you a lot in this movie. So how is that? How is it working together with him in this movie?
I have a little brother, who's the dearest person in my heart, my brother Tom. So I already know that older brother, younger brother relationship really well. And so it was an easy thing to slip into with Nick. And Nick is such a humble, appealing guy that, you're drawn to him. And I felt like, I just want to be his big brother and just try to help him through this process, and whatever I've learned in my years, if I can, give him a little pointer here or there, but mostly I just wanted to help create this character who is an anchor in the movie, because his character goes off on a crazy journey. So I thought it would be cool if I could create a real stable base as economically and efficiently storytelling wise as I could.
Now, did you know anything about Muay Thai before you started doing this movie, or did you have to ask Nick did Nick fill you in on what exactly was going on? Did you have a little bit of background? Everybody's into, combat sports, into like UFC and all that, MMA. So it kind of entitles all of that stuff. Did you have any idea about that when you started the movie or got into it?
Very tangential. I had a background where I had boxed a lot and trained a lot in boxing, not competitive fights, just right. Trained. And I trained in Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee's, martial arts discipline back in the day, just because, Bruce Lee was really smart. He that whole style was developed as a showbiz style. The most efficient way to hit somebody is usually not the most interesting cinematic way to do it. So Bruce Lee combined the two ideas, and that's why I thought that was an interesting discipline. So I'd had, I've been exposed to a little bit, but not to the degree that my character in the movie would be an expert on it.
Now, you've done so much in your career. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of movies you've been in. You also have your hand in many other things. I didn't even know that you were a voiceover talent. Like, that is interesting to me, as being in radio and stuff like that. So tell me a little bit about voiceover and how you kind of worked your way into that endeavor in the media business.
Yeah, well, one of my first jobs, my very first day in front of a movie camera was a commercial for the U.S. Army. I was a theater actor in New York, and they brought me in, and Bruce Kirby was the dad of the great actor Bruno Kirby.
Yes.
And he played my dad in this commercial. And so it was a great experience. They showed the commercial on the Super Bowl. It really started my career. I got an audition with Steven Spielberg because of it. And so I was off and running in my career because of this commercial. And then the ad agency that made the commercial was called NW Air. And they called me about a year later and they said, hey, we have another commercial where there's a guy on a submarine or something and we can't hear his line. And would you come in and recreate that line? And I was like, yeah, sure. I thought I was doing them a favor. And then about a year later, I got like $30,000 of checks for being in this commercial. And I was like, wow, this is the greatest business I've ever seen. So I didn't know much about it. And then, a few years later, I became the voice of Bud Light. And yesterday, if you watch the Green Bay Packers game, they showed one of my voice with Cedric the Entertainer. That was one of the ones I did. And that was the greatest job ever because, I'm the voice of Bud Light. It was all the Bud Light you could drink and tickets to any game you wanted to go to. And the Bud Light people were unbelievable. And then I became the voice of Lincoln Cars and I did stuff for Major League Baseball. And so, I really liked it because I grew up, not listening to the radio. I'm not that old, but I mean, my dad liked the old time radio shows. And sometimes we'd listen to those late at night on the radio in the car. And I just always liked the theater of the mind. And so I think radio is a great, great medium and Zoom's awesome too. But in a way, I like having the imagination of, wait, what does this person look like? I hear their voice, I hear their vibe, but so I always like that mystery.
Now, speaking of Zoom, we're doing a Zoom interview right now, and it seems to be the way that everybody's going. Hopefully, even after this pandemic is over, hopefully Zoom will still be around to do many things. But how has your year been for you personally? How has it been? How have you moved your way through the business of what you do during this time?
Well, I have two teenagers, so it's been great in a sense that I've gotten to spend more time with them. We always spend time together when I'm not filming, but for me, it's weird. I've never gone this long in 35 years without being on a set somewhere. So I did a couple episodes of Empire in February, and since then I haven't done anything except voiceovers, and I'm grateful for the voiceovers, but I didn't realize how much I really like being on a set. I mean, obviously I knew I liked being an actor, but I missed the interplay with because you have these young people on the set who are on their first job and then you have some other people that are trying something new. And it's just dealing with this instant society of 100 or 200 people that, you can't learn everybody's name, but you're trying to figure out who's got an interesting story and all that interplay and drinking a coffee together. And I'm a very social animal, so I miss a lot of that.
Now, you talk about doing many different hats and doing many different things. And you did talk a little bit about the movie Haymaker that you're currently going to star in on January 29th. It comes out. And you talked about Nick Sasso, who directed it, wrote it, produced it, all that good stuff. What is it like wearing all those different hats? You said you give him a lot of credit for doing all these different things. How is it like, how are you able to do all those things and be a part of this business? It seems like it's extremely tough.
It's really tough. And I did it with my movie, Two Tickets to Paradise, but I'd already been working for a long time. I'd already done a lot of those things, writing and acting and, and even kind of directing when there's inexperienced people. Sometimes you step in with suggestions or whatever when you're asked. And so it's very, very difficult. And I've done 12 movies, I think now with first-time directors. And it's always an interesting experience, but you never know unless you do get a first-time director. You're not going to be on the ground floor with Quentin Tarantino or Christopher Nolan or whatever. I mean, everybody's going to want to be with them after they prove they can make a movie. So I've always taken a shot, and I feel like it's also a way of kind of giving back where, you're lending your experience to somebody who's trying to do something. In the case of this one with Nick, when you're the producer, when you're the director, when you're the writer, when you're the lead character, I mean, that's really a lot. And in Nick's case, that's how he had to get the movie done. I've been in other situations where somebody does all four things because of their ego. And I think that's the wrong reason to do it. If you have somebody else that will step in and direct it better than you can, let them do it, or let them play the part or let them produce it. But in this case, Nick is just a guy who he felt like that's how I got to get it done. And he wasn't doing it to prove that he was some kind of like a versatile guy or anything like that. He just was trying to get it done. And he's a very humble guy, and he's very he's an honest guy. He doesn't manipulate people. So I really like being around him. I'd work for him again. I mean, I think I just think he's a really solid dude, and I think the movie speaks for itself. It's a very good movie. So I'm rooting for Nick Sasso.
Now we have a character in the movie. Nomi Ruiz, she's a transgender person, and she brings a different vibe to the movie. What was that like on the set? Like, did you feel like she wanted to make a statement about herself and about how it is to be transgender during these times?
I didn't get any of that from Nomi. We didn't spend that much time together because we didn't have that many scenes. But I remember one day we were having a beer, her, me, and a couple of the fighters,
Yeah.
in a bar on Avenue B, and it was sort of like, she's her, I'm me, and it's like if you and I were having a beer, it's like I'm not having a beer with your entire history up to that moment. I'm just having a beer with you in that moment. So I respect her because she's created this niche for herself as a singer and a performer, and people respond to her, and it's hard. I mean, anybody who can get a leg up in show business, you gotta respect it, because there's always a little element of luck, but there's a much bigger element of hard work and dedication. And so, what, God bless her, hopefully she'll continue to have a great career as a singer. And I think she's a very compelling on-screen presence. So I don't think it's the last we're going to see of her.
What's it like? I was speaking with DB Sweeney, actor extraordinaire. What's it like, DB, being the guy now that people go to for information, for help, for direction in how to go about being an actor? Like, you're the guy on the set. They're like, well, I'm not sure if this scene's working well. Let's ask DB. He's in the movie. What can he add for me to be better? How does that feel right now in your career to be that type of person where people look to you?
Well, it's kind of crazy because, I remember my first movie, Gardens of Stone. I was 25 years old, and it wasn't my first movie. It was my first leading movie in a big time movie. But Dean Stockwell, the great actor, and James Earl Jones, they just went out of their way to, not to mentor me like, hey, Sonny, here's how you do it. But they basically just made themselves available to me. And, and even James Caan, who's kind of in a crazy period of his life at that time, he always made sure that if I wanted to borrow his rental car, like he was, and that was kind of an in-character thing for him to do, the younger guy, give him your rental car, and so there were very subtle ways that I was mentored early in my career. And so I've just tried to, now that I'm sort of the gray beard on the set, you just don't want to like tell people, here's what you ought to do. But if anybody has a question, I'm glad to, avail them of whatever insight I might have gleaned from the 35 years I've been doing it.
You talked about Gardens of Stone. You've been in many movies. What is it like? How was it like starting out? Like, what was it? Have the business changed a lot since you started back then than it is now? I mean, obviously, I think a lot more indie films are being made, right? A lot more chances for people to do different things than maybe back then. But have you seen a steady increase of different types of movie filmmaking through your career?
Yeah, the whole thing has really, really evolved, not just in the way it's delivered to the customers, but I really I miss film. I worked with film right up until, I guess, there's still a few things that are on film. Like when we shot 2.5 Men, it was still shot on film, which is really an interesting thing for a performer, because when you're shooting digital, sometimes they don't even turn the camera off. It's like, which to me, if I was an editor, I'd be like, please turn the camera off. I got to go through all this. So. But something about film, you have a finite amount of film in that canister, and whether it's 1,000 feet or 10,000 feet or whatever the case may be, there's a guy with a stopwatch, and he's like, we only have 30 seconds more film. We need to get this quick reaction. You got to make sure you do it real well. And I thought something about the precious nature and the fact that there's a finite amount of film, it elevates you as a performer. You're sort of like, all right, we got to go. Let's get it right now. And the digital experience is different, where, we have an unlimited supply, or the only thing we can run out of is time. And, so it's a different challenge, but I do miss film just because of the way that it was like, we don't have an endless amount of film. Let's get this right. Come on, let's go.
Oh, we have to talk about 8 Man Out. You played Shoeless Joe Jackson, John Cusack, great ensemble cast. What was it like? This is obviously a sports station here at Fox Sports Radio. What was it like to play Shoeless Joe Jackson? And during these times now where you have a lot of, players like Barry Bonds and stuff who are like, considered not getting into the Hall of Fame. Are they going to get into the Hall of Fame? You played a character that was kind of chastised during the 1918 World Series. What was that like? And do you have any thoughts on what's going on now with a lot of the steroids that players are being looked at and to not get into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about it. It was a great honor to play Shoeless Joe Jackson. At that time, nobody had really believably portrayed a baseball player to the stand, as a former baseball player. Robert De Niro is a great actor, but Bang the Drum Slowly is ridiculous. And Pride of the Yankees, Gary Cooper apparently was such a bad athlete that they had him bat right-handed and run to third base and then they flipped the negative. So they had to reverse art direct all the logos. So I knew about that. And I was a right-handed hitter. So I said to John Sayles, why don't we do that? Like that way I can look as good as I can. And he said, no, we don't have the money to do 2 different versions of the uniforms in the stadium and everything. So he said, just do it the best you can. And so I spent 6 months. I spent 2 months with the Kenosha Twins in the Midwest League, taking BP everyday lefty. And just, that was also to try to soak up the experience of, by the time the 1980s, Major League Baseball players were already rock stars. In 1919, there were no trainers. There were no, these guys would sometimes get dressed in the hotel and walk across to the ballpark. So to get that experience, that's why I spent the summer with the Midwest League. A-ball was like what big leagues were in 1919. But as far as the Hall of Fame, I really think they're missing a really good opportunity to, obviously Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens are 2 of the greatest players ever to play. Whether steroids was cheating or not, it certainly was cheating in the sense that it allowed you to recover faster and get back on the field faster. But Barry Bonds was probably on his way to the Hall of Fame before steroids, when his hat was 2 sizes smaller. And Roger Clemens was on his way to the Hall of Fame before he went and pitched for the Toronto Blue Jays. So I think the Hall of Fame should establish what I like to say is a rogues gallery. Put Ty Cobb in there, put Roger Clemens in there, put Pete Rose in there. You accomplished what you accomplished against your contemporaries. The place where they have to look at it, I think, is the victims of the steroids are guys like, like my friend Scott Erickson, pitched for the Orioles, pitched for the Twins, very nice big league career. I think he won 210 games or 220 games, Hall of Fame. He's not a Hall of Fame level, but he's also pitching against all these guys that were cheating. So what would have happened to his numbers over 20 years if they were honest like he was? And so to me, that's the nuance that I think, you have to reevaluate some of these pitchers who were victimized by these cheating hitters.
What kind of sports are you into? Do you follow certain teams? Do you have teams that you like the best? What's your background and your love of sports going on right now, DB?
The cutting edge was a gift to me in so many ways, but the biggest way was I learned to skate. I was 29 years old or something, and MGM said, here, we'll give you 3 months. They rented out a rink for Moira Kelly and I in New York City, and they said, do the best you can. And so Moira and I got very competitive with each other. She concentrated on figure skating, and I concentrated on hockey, which is just right for the movie. And, if you do something if you're athletic to begin with, and you do something every day for 3 months, whether it's hit golf balls or shoot archery or whatever the case may be. So she and I both got pretty good. And then in the first week of filming The Cutting Edge up in Toronto, she broke her leg landing a jump, which that's how good she had gotten, is that she's already doing jumps after 3 months and a single axle, whatever, but still after 3 months, pretty impressive. So they had stunt doubles for both of us. And the plan was to sort of use the stunt double to stabilize me or her, while the camera sort of obscured enough of that person that you would think that it was Moira or me. But when she broke her leg, no, they had to use her stunt double entirely. So they started to need to use me more than they had planned, which was a great experience. And there's a lot of fun movie making trickery that went on in The Cutting Edge. But it gave me this love for skating that, I skate every Wednesday now with a bunch of guys here in Chicago. And I've never stopped skating since we did the movie. And so I missed out on playing as a kid, but I love the whole world of hockey so much. And that's my favorite sport to watch now as a fan as well. Because I know how difficult it is to, in baseball or football or basketball, you have to walk before you play it. In hockey, you have to learn it's sort of like learning how to be, a great basketball player underwater. You'd have to learn to be a good swimmer first. And so I have enormous respect for hockey players and figure skaters.
Are you a Blackhawks fan then?
Well, I grew up as a New York Rangers fan. I'll never lose that. But I am a Blackhawks fan because I live here, and they had a great run that I came in on the tail end of.
Yeah.
And, Jonathan Taves and Seabrook and Keith and Kane, those are just great, not only great players, but they're great people and they're great characters. And so I've really enjoyed being a Blackhawks fan. Of course, Pat Foley, the announcer for the Blackhawks, I got to play golf with him many times, and he's one of the great characters of you talk about, he's obviously a TV commentator, but he's got that radio presence where he's, he really tells the story of the game in an interesting way.
DB Sweeney is here with us, and we're talking about Haymaker. It's in theaters, on demand, and digital on January 29th. And of course, if you're seeing this after that date, just go back and type in Haymaker on somewhere. You're going to find it somewhere to watch. DB, where do you think your career is going now? You're obviously doing a lot of independent stuff. You still got your voiceover stuff. You're still doing. I think you have like a video stuff with Sean Astin. Tell me a little bit about that.
Two Dum Micks. It's a Two Dum Micks is a short film, and I love Sean. We did Memphis Belle together years ago, and I always wanted to work with him again. He's just a great guy, and he played Rudy. He was in Lord of the Rings. He's awesome. Stranger Things.
Yes.
So I wrote this short, and I asked Sean if he would do it, and it's my homage to Abbott and Costello and the Three Stooges, and I love that era of slapstick comedy, and I feel like the world is so divided now, and I feel like the one thing that can bring everybody together is slapstick comedy, because it doesn't really require having a social or political point of view to make the joke work. It's just about, who's going to get the pie in the face. And, so Sean and I had so much fun doing this, and people are responding to it. It's won over 65 film festival awards, and we're trying to figure out how to do it, whether we do it as a regular series, like a 30-minute long series of episodes, or whether we do it as, a series of shorts. And, but Sean is one of the people I dearly love in Hollywood. And so I'm hoping that we get to do more soon.
Yeah, I think that's one thing when we talk about moving forward in your career and moving forward in the movie business, is that there's so many avenues for you, right? I mean, nowadays, just so many places you can go to, YouTube, TikTok. I mean, just so many places to just take your skill and let people see for free, for a little bit of money, for expensive money. It's wonderful. And so I think you're taking advantage of that. And I think it's very interesting. And you found it to be something that you can do, right?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's a lot of work. I like when somebody calls me up and says, I'm going to do all the other jobs, and all you have to do is act. I mean, that's the best. And, when you're on a set, and sometimes somebody will even bring you coffee sometimes. So it's great. But I like it all. I mean, I want to stay busy. I love acting. And if somebody wants me to be the bad guy in a Marvel movie, I'm right here ready to go. But, there's not as many big studio movies as there used to be. And it's all a little bit more fragmented. So, you just got to keep on trucking.
You heard it here first, MCU fans, right? DB Sweeney, villain in the next movie. So quickly, I know your time is limited. What do you think about what's going on with the movies today? Like, that movies are being put onto like on-demand places, or like HBO Max was releasing most of the movies on video now. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think it's a natural outgrowth of that was a process that was happening before the COVID lockdowns, and the COVID just accelerated it. I'm hoping the movie theaters come back, because that's my favorite way to see a movie. It's fun to watch a movie in your house too. And I think that giving people the choices was inevitable. But I'm really worried about like the art house movies, like this movie Haymaker would, there's places like the Cinema Village in New York is a theater that I just have so many great memories of seeing a movie in there. Every town has, when I lived in Denver, there's a few little theaters there and something about going to see a movie like Haymaker in that theater. It's not just seeing the movie in a group. You're seeing a movie with a group of people who really are attracted to, maybe more arty, experimental, independent films. And I like that audience, and I want to walk in and walk out of the theater with them and maybe hear what they say outside after the movie's over. Not if I'm in the movie and they hated it. I don't want to hear that at all. But just that, the idea that people love movies coming together and the sense of community. So I really worry about that going away. And I hope Alamo Drafthouse does a great job with, they have about, I think, 12 theaters now, or I don't know how many they have post-pandemic, but, let's get together. I think movie theaters have to evolve. They're going to have to become more, where you get a beer or maybe you get a pizza and you watch your movie. But the old model of, the $9 stale popcorn and watching the B movies, that I don't think that's ever coming back.
DB, is there something we don't know about you? Like you like to eat mac and cheese for dinner every night. I mean, is there something that we should know about you out there that nobody really kind of knows about you right now?
Well, I started cooking in restaurants when I was 13 years old.
Okay.
I lied about my age, and then I would work in a restaurant for 3 or 4 months and then move on to another restaurant, because I felt like I had learned all that not every place has a chef, but the main cook or the owner of the restaurant, the owner operator, I learned all his moves in 3 or 4 months. I moved on to the next one. So, I cooked in over 20 restaurants, became a sous chef, and
wow.
Food is my passion. I love cooking for my friends and my family. And, if anybody follows me on Instagram or Twitter, Real DB Sweeney, I know it's kind of dumb, but I do put some pictures of the things that I make on there. And, the same, it's kind of a little bit like my aesthetic for movies and TV. Like I don't like a lot of frills and unnecessary stuff. I want to get to the meat and the potatoes. So
literally,
so I do think I have a consistent aesthetic across the two different platforms of food and entertainment.
All right, before we go, you did mention your Twitter and your Instagram. We'll just mention them again. What are they again so everybody can follow you?
Real DB Sweeney. And if somebody can explain to me how you get verified on Twitter, they won't verify me, but there's no dots.
Good.
It's real DB Sweeney. And, but I won't bore you too much. My rules of Twitter is that if people put more than 2 or 3 things a day, I unfollow them because I feel like there's not that many interesting things happening to you that you need to be constantly doing everything. So I try to respect your time and only put a few things on a week. So hopefully people will be amused by that.
Well, let me tell you, when you're in sports radio or sports talk, you do put a little bit more than 2 because sports is going on, especially when there's games going on.
Sure.
So you're always commenting on games. So you might get a little more from us than you do from everybody else. But so one last thing, if you can tell me a couple of points of Haymaker that you want people to know about this movie, which comes out on January 29th.
Well, from the early days of Greek theater right through the Romans and Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, there's the mismatched star-crossed lovers is a very durable plot line. And here we have a transgender singer who hires a working class guy from the Bronx to be her bodyguard. And initially they're just, like cats and dogs, it's like the cutting edge. And then they slowly develop an affection for each other and a respect. And it's a very surprising movie because it doesn't really go where you think it's going to go. But it's a very timely movie in the sense that, we're such a divided country. And I think that one thing movies can do is remind us that, we might be different on some very small points, but essentially we're all humans and we all get along if we try. And I think it's a very hopeful movie in that sense.
The key word, respect. There's always keywords in everything. And your respect is one thing that we need to do a lot better with. So DB, thank you so much for taking your morning out to speak with us. And we look forward to more of your endeavors as your career continues to grow. Thanks, DB.
Thank you so much for putting me on.
Well, thank you very much, DB, for joining us here on the Jon Ramos Show Interviews podcast here at foxsportsradio.com. Again, go check out Haymaker, which comes out on video, on demand, at your theaters, if you can get there, on January 29th. And of course, if you watch this past that date, just type in Haymaker or look for it somewhere. I'm sure you'll find it and take a watch. Again, it was distributed by Kamikaze Dogfight and Gravitas Ventures. It's a Hero Face film, and it was written, directed, and edited by Nick Sasso. The movie is Haymaker. Thanks again for joining us here on the Jon Ramos Show at foxsportsradio.com. You can catch me Monday through Friday from noon to 3 Pacific, 3 to 6 Eastern Time on the Doug Gottlieb Show at Fox Sports Radio. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.